Hello, and welcome to Creepycore and Folklore, the show about creatures, encounters, old tales, and myths. I'm your host, Iona Wayland, a dark fantasy author, mental health professional, and overall curious person. I want to join other spooky souls and hear about these unusual stories. Hello, spooky soul, and welcome back to Creepycore and Folklore. This is episode 22 of a two-part episode. So I am planning on doing the first part here and the second part later on, obviously. But I'm going to be focusing on folklore related to wintertime. Since on the 21st of this month, we're going to have our first day of winter. And I figured what better way to celebrate it than talking about all the creepy shit that goes down in December or the winter season in general. Also, it's really nice because since it's going to happen on 12/21, it's actually a palindrome. And I don't know if I talked about how much I love palindromes either. Also, in the US, we do the month and then the day and then the year, which is super dumb, I know, because the thing that changes every day should probably go first, not second in that line of information, but whatever. So in the US at least, it's going to be 12/21. I guess if you're in like a different country that puts the days of the week first, 21/12, it would still be a palindrome, forward, back. And a palindrome is the same thing forward as it is backward. So for instance, I know I brought this up before, but I got married on 8/18/18, and that is just so satisfying for my brain. So satisfying. So I found this really cool article, and some things I had to corroborate with other articles too, just to make sure I was understanding certain concepts correctly if I hadn't heard of them before. And there was a lot about winter and the creatures that come out that I had no idea about, had never learned of certain mythologies and such. But I used this article, A to Z of Winter Folklore by Magda Knight, and it was so good. So if you want to check that out and have spoilers for next episode, or look at some of the ones that I'm not covering, because there's a couple that I skipped, then you can check out in the resource section in the show notes. So we're going to go, just like it says, in alphabetical order. I'm going to go until the letter M, like I'm going to stop it after I finish the letter L's, and we're going to go from there. So let's dive right in, shall we, into this winter folklore. So the first one is called Apple Cider Wassail, and this is mulled cider. Also, I'm really embarrassed because when I was doing research into this, I realized that mulled, M-U-L-L-E-D, is like a type of way of making something, because I went to this like office party once and there was mulled wine, and I thought the person was saying moldy wine, and I obviously don't know shit about shit. And I thought it was like a way of making wine, kind of like how blue cheese is made with mold, for instance, and wine is usually very old, and so I was like, old mulled wine, got it. And so I'm like, well, I will not be drinking that. And now I realize that it's mulled, and super embarrassed about that. So what happens is during the apple cider wassail is that the person or people will toast the apple trees for a good harvest next year. And they're singing and drinking and toasting, and you even pour some of the mulled cider on the roots of the trees as like a way to say, thank you, this is what I made from your fruitfulness, and I want to give back to you. Next up, we have Årsgång or Årsgång. It's called, in English it would be considered year walking, but it's a Swedish divination for Christmas or New Year's Eve. And so these people will go on journeys to risk their body and soul to be able to meet spirits and have visions that will play out in the next year. I thought that was very interesting. There's many different cultures that do something similar to try and invoke visions and divinations of the future. I'm personally unsure of the method, but the article says that the people will fast and will visit powerful holy places, such as churches or altars or wherever, sometimes out in nature, in order to have these visions, but it's not always out in nature either. The next one are these small creatures that live in the Swiss Alps called the Barbagatesi. I can't confirm if that's the correct pronunciation because I only heard non-Swedish people say that word. But these Barbagatesi, or Barbagatsi, have huge flat feet, a white beard, and white fur that covers their body and head. And their hair sometimes will get frozen and look like icicles, and they hide underground until the first snow. And then after the first snow, they wander and or cross-country ski across the Alps to get from place to place. And one of their favorite things to do is to surf avalanches. So we got some daredevils. They often avoid humans, but some have been said to help shepherds find their sheep that are lost before a winter storm or during a winter storm. And others have reported that they've been entrapped or smothered by an avalanche, and that it was a Barbagatesi that dug them out of that avalanche. The next one I actually covered a bit in the Halloweeny episode, but it's called Belsnickling or Belsnickel. And he's apparently this old man from German folklore. He often wears ragged and tattered clothing, but he will give good kids sweets, and he will hit or threaten with a switch if they are bad kids, whatever that even means. I'm still not convinced there's such thing as a quote bad kid. But you know, that's me being an annoying trauma and child therapist for you and being like, there's no such thing. So I guess we got to be careful about that old man Belsnickel. But it was neat because in the Halloweeny episode, there's actually something called Belsnickling. And if you're interested in that, you can give that a listen. The next one, oh my goodness, is my absolute favorite. You tell me if you would enjoy this too, but it's books. The gift of giving books for the winter holidays, Christmas tradition. I feel like I can't remember if I am going to cover this one about Iceland, what the thing is in Iceland where everybody drinks hot chocolate and eats chocolate and reads books on Christmas. But I feel like that's something I'm gonna take up. The next one is Boreas, the Greek god of the north wind. It kind of reminds me of the Aurora Borealis, but I don't think that's the same. I don't know. It might have some roots because there's some really interesting overlaps, and I'll talk about the Northern Lights later on in the part 2 of this episode. But he's the Greek god of the north wind, and he brings chills and winter to the lands. He has a nymph daughter named Chione, or in Greek, it's pronounced Chione, and she is the Greek goddess of the snow, and we'll go over her later. Then, for the letter C, we have Christmas Eve folklore, which is kind of why I'm here. But what you're supposed to do is you cut evergreens and you decorate. If you decorate too early, this one makes me laugh. It's supposed to mean that there will be quarrels between family members, which I think is hilarious because there's still to this day a huge debate about when to start decorating for the winter season. Is it before Thanksgiving? Is it after Thanksgiving? You tell me what you think. And I wonder if someone were to cut evergreens and start decorating at certain times of the year, who would be spurred into quarreling with that person. It's also said, this is so cute, this is making my inner child like alight with joy, but it's said that animals will talk on Christmas Eve, and they have the ability to have their voices heard. However, they only use this to talk to each other, and it's bad luck if you try and eavesdrop on them, which is a bad thing to do right before the new year. In Poland, it's said that angels deliver presents under the tree for Christmas Eve, and I thought that was really interesting, especially because it made me think about the special angel episode, episode 20. And it makes me wonder which kind of angel is going to deliver those, because that can be really endearing or really horrifying depending on which type. This next one is called Ded Moroz. It's Slavic. It's kind of like Santa or Father Christmas. But this person is considered, quote, Old Man Frost, end quote. This person wears long, pale blue robes and a fur hat or a furred crown. And this person brings presents to kids. The next one is kind of going to have these far-reaching symbology as we go on in the alphabet, in the winter folklore alphabet. But the next one is evergreen. And evergreens, for many different reasons, are considered to be really symbolic during the holiday season and the Christmas season as a whole. But the ones that we'll be talking about later are holly, ivy, mistletoe, and pine. The next one is Frau Perchte. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but I am trying my best. So thank you for being so patient with me. This is called the Christmas Witch, and it's so interesting how witchcraft and witch depictions show up during the winter season as we go on. But this is more in Eastern Europe. She's said to have a goose foot. I don't know if that means she's holding a goose foot or if one of her feet or both of her feet are goose feet, but I wouldn't mind having goose feet. I think it would help me swim really fast. I don't know. And she's said to have like goose fat as well, that because goose fat back in the day, or even sometimes now, it has like these metaphysical properties to help you fly. And then there are these, she's said to give generous gifts to hard workers during the 12 days of Christmas, and she's supposed to punish the idle and greedy. And listen to how Frau Perchte like hurts people and punishes people. She will she's not here to play is the deal here. She will rip out intestines and replace them with rocks, rubbish, and straw. She is here for the hard workers, whatever that means to her, I guess. The next one is Grilla. She is a giantess in the Icelandic mountains. She's said to have 3 husbands, 72 children, and she is also partnered with the Yule Cat. And in the, I actually talked way more about the Yule Cat in the Curiosity Cat episode. She is said to cook and eat misbehaving children. Man, there's a lot of all or nothing here. The stakes are high for, quote, bad children and idle people. It's like, it is punishment galore. It's like, listen, you're going to be tortured and eaten if you don't work every day. The next one is the Glastonbury holy thorn. It's a common hawthorn plant. It blooms 2 times a year, in winter and in spring. So it's really neat to think about because it's like a solstice plant. It makes me want to, again, include this in a book. It's fine. It's just me slowly unraveling every possible idea in live time for you. Sorry about that. About my future books. Oh, also, since I'm already talking about my book. Since you're forcing me to talk about it, I'm kidding. It was really upsetting because I had to put off writing it for the pregnancy and postpartum recovery, and then of course my accident, and then I finally was able to untangle. There were 3 chapters that were really difficult, and I really had to work to untangle them. I had left some plot holes. There were some loose ends that I had to take care of plot-wise, and some character continuity issues. And I did those 3 chapters, and I was like, yes, I did it. And then I took a break from it for a couple weeks, and then I came back to work on the next one. I was like, well, the hardest part is over, because I was honestly dreading that one part. I knew it was messed up. I left it for future me to take care of, and future me was there, and I was like, what the hell? And so I go to open it up, and those 3 chapters were gone. So I like cried a lot and got really upset, and my friend Haley was there for moral support to try and help me recover it. Thank you, Haley. Hi, Haley. You're the best. And I was just so upset. And finally, and I was starting to think like, maybe it's not meant to be. I was getting into that, like, it's a bad omen and it doesn't want to be written. But I actually like was able to work on it yesterday, and it felt really good to do that. And I was having like a rough day yesterday too. And so I was like really thankful that I was able to, I fixed 2 out of the 3 chapters again, and I just have one more difficult chapter to get through. It's interesting because there's a whole part in the scene I was writing that I was getting like bogged down in with the symbolism of like these dried flowers, and because it takes place, well, I don't want to give too much away if you're going to read it, and no pressure to read it obviously, but it's like there are these preserved flowers that they need to keep. And so whenever I read about, like whenever I was doing research about the different evergreens and all their different meanings behind them, it was really inspiring too. So thank you for listening to this podcast, because while I was doing research for this, it was helping me write my book. But back to the Glastonbury Holythorn. So it's a common hawthorn plant, blooms twice a year, winter and spring, total solstice plant in my opinion. But there's lore and superstitions behind it. Since the 17th century, the flowering branch was cut and displayed as a Christmas feast centerpiece. And I think I'm going to look it up because I actually don't know what the Glastonbury Holythorn looks like. Let me check it out. Oh, interesting. This is not what I thought it would look like. It's honestly kind of craggy and like, it's very spindly looking, and its branches will go in these like wildly different directions. Like some of them are like more than 90 degrees in the opposite direction. It is very thorny, thorn bush looking. However, the teeny tiny blooms are these like white flowers with teeny little stamen that are really delicate looking. This is so interesting. If you want something interesting to look at, try looking up the Glastonbury Holythorns, and it's very cool. It's unexpected. Oh, and they have little berries too, little red berries. That's really cool. The next one is Hans Trap. Okay, so this person was said to be exiled from the church and sent into the forest, where he turned into a scarecrow. And for people that didn't notice, I mean, this is total nightmare fuel right now. Like total nightmare fuel. I cannot tell you how many times I've been scared by a scarecrow, and I'm not a crow. Even though crows are very cool, but they're creepy sometimes. They're like really scary to look at, and they hang and loll in such an odd way. So I guess whenever he turned into a scarecrow, he will if the children don't spot him, always targeting the children, he will eat them. What is up with eating children around this season? This is so upsetting. He's said to be like a Saint Nicholas counterpart. He's said to like kind of hang out like a creep in Alsace and Lorraine, France regions. Next up, we're going to cover holly and ivy. They are both evergreens, like I was talking about before. Holly is supposed to be symbolic of males, But that's a bit confusing to me because I have a family member who does like husbandry and then also has a nursery for plants. Okay, so just so in case you don't know, husbandry has to do with like taking care of like terrain and stuff and like farmland. And then a nursery, I'm talking about like a nursery for like pine trees and like boxwoods and stuff like that. Even though that sounded very, his work, like the name of his work is the word husband, and the word nursery is often compared with like being a father or a mother or something. But just for context, that's what he does. And he told me that there are male and female holly bushes. Like some plants are like a male and female counterpart. Lots of plants are both at the same time. And so I thought that was really interesting that the holly bushes are symbolic of men or maleness, whatever that means, especially if they have the red berries, which is also very interesting because in the plant world, that means it's a quote female holly bush, end quote. And then, so holly represents males, ivy represents females, and it's supposed to usher nature through the darkness and bloom next season, which is just such a wonderful sentiment to have. There's also holly in Christianity. Apparently, Jesus's crown of thorns is supposed to be comparable to the prickly holly leaves. Like, it's supposed to represent his crucifixion, and the red berries are supposed to represent the blood drawn from him wearing that crown of thorns. In Celtic mythology, there was a holly king, and he was in charge of the 6 winter months, and there was an oak king, and he was in charge of the 6 summer months. Now that makes sense to me because of where I live. There are 6 months of winter. And there are 6 months of summer, and there's spring and fall in there. But like, depending on how early or late the frost is, depending on how early or late the April showers are, it's mostly just winter and summer, one or the other. So I totally get the holly king and the oak king, which is also more fodder for future books. And then ivy is said to represent nature's resurrection in spring. So I think that's interesting too, that like not only is it evergreen and so it happens during the winter months, but there's that like connotation with crucifixion and resurrection as well. Now we've made it to good old Jack Frost. I'm sure you've heard of this guy. He's supposed to represent winter, cold, and be a frost spirit. He is also sometimes considered a youthful counterpart to Old Man Winter. He's mischievous and often nips at noses and cheeks and fingertips, and he's in charge of making the fern-like patterns on windows, and he often browns the leaves as the season changes. The next one is Juhlapuki, which is a Finnish, quote, Christmas buck, or I've also seen it as a goat as well. Unless boy goats are called bucks. I should know this because my cousins had a goat farm. But whenever I read more about it, it's honestly horrifying to me because I don't know if you like watching animated shows. I'm a sucker for any kind of show, but I really think there's like a certain finesse to animation. And there's a Netflix original series called Centaur World that I adored. It's so weird. It's so wacky kooky. They have so many incredible cast members, and it's also cool because a lot of the cast members are people of color, specifically Asian, and I thought that was really neat. And a lot of the people there are Broadway stars, and they can totally sing, so they're singing with it too. But I don't want to give too much away, but there's a really scary character that really messed with me called the Nowhere King, depicted in Centaur World, and it looks like, you know, there's a lot of similarities to the Juhlapuki. He covers his face with a mask and wears horns on his head, and he wears his fur-lined coat inside out. He's, and I'm sorry, but like, not to get too graphic here, but I have never hunted, but I did live in an area where there was a lot of hunting. I guess I still do live in an area where there's a lot of hunting, but not like right in front of me, and they don't prepare the animal after the hunt right in front of me. But seeing a buck with its fur coat like on inside out is upsetting to me, and I can absolutely visualize it. That's what I'm going to say about that. It's said to have an older form of Nutapuki, and I'm not sure if I'm saying that one correctly. Luckily, with the Julupuki, I was able to find pronunciation. Doesn't mean I'm saying it correctly, but I was able to try and copy it the best I can. But the Nutapuki, I was not able to find pronunciation of that. But these were considered evil spirits that demand gifts and leftovers from the Yule feast. And I have never identified more with a creature. Give me your food. Give me your food. It smells amazing. I'm not going to celebrate with you, but I would like to eat the food you made. Absolutely. Now they're more like Father Christmas. There's often like red robes and a sleigh pulled by reindeer. There's also a bit of a link with the Norse god Odin and the wild hunt that's led across the sky, but I'm going to get to the wild hunt in part 2 of the winter mythology episode. Next up is Krampus. I had not heard about Krampus until my adult life. He's a lot like Hans Trapp, considered a counterpart to St. Nicholas. However, his appearance is not a scarecrow, it's more devilish. So he has horns, a forked tongue, fangs, cloven hooves, often depicted with fur, and he's said to be carrying chains and birch branches to punish bad children. And he also is said to be holding a huge sack over his back like Santa Claus or St. Nicholas. However, the sack is not full of gifts, and it's not full of coal. It's full of ill-behaved children to eat. Why is this a thing? I think that by like the winter months, when parents were with their kids like for months on end and they needed a reason to help their kids like act nicely, like the promise of presents was maybe not enough, and the parents got a little stir crazy and just like made up these other creatures. I'm gonna pretend they were made up, and hopefully that they're not based off of real creatures. The next one is Kallikantzaroi, which originates in Greece, and it's an underground goblin. They saw away at the roots of the quote world tree, which I'm absolutely like, I know I keep talking about this, but my book really does take place in winter. And so I knew a bunch of the sequel that I'm working on now, but I am using the imagery of a world tree. So I don't know if specifically when it comes to Greek mythology, but in general, the tree of life or the world tree is considered this giant tree that the earth like exists around, and it has deep roots in the center of the earth. It's very interesting. It's an interesting depiction, but apparently these Kallikantzaroi are these goblins that are trying to saw away at it. However, during the 12 days of Christmas, they come above ground. And what's good about it is that it allows the tree to heal while they're gone for almost 2 weeks. But what's bad is that they cause chaos. And so what you're supposed to do, and this is really interesting because this is very much related to the special episode, Revamp the Vamp, where I talk about all sorts of different kinds of vampires. And these are not vampires, but you're supposed to they're kind of using a similar method of keeping a colander outside because they can't help but count the holes in the colander. And they're also said to not be able to count above the number 2. So they'll just start over and over again. So you're also supposed to burn a Yule log in the chimney to stop them from coming down the chimney. It's also said that people born on Saturday can see them. So, oh my gosh, I don't think I'm able to see them. I think I was born on a Tuesday, but maybe my baby can see them. I don't think she was born on a Saturday though. I think it was like a middle of the week type of thing. Yes, she was born on Wednesday, actually. Wednesday's child is full of woe. I remember that poem, which apparently is why Wednesday Addams was named Wednesday. But now I'm going off on a tangent. So maybe, let me check one more person. Let me see if my husband can see them. Oh my God, my husband was born on a Wednesday too. I'm a Tuesday. They're both Wednesdays. None of us can see the Calicanceroi. I wonder if you can see it. Were you born on a Saturday? Please let me know if you would be able to see them. Next up, we have La Befana. It's another Christmas witch. She can be found in Italy, Russia. In Russia, they call her babushka, and in Eastern Europe as well. Apparently in January, so watch out, me and my baby, she flies around on a broomstick to each house to see if she can find baby Jesus. Okay, so we're getting into the whole religious persecution thing. So she sees, if you are depicting like the nativity scene, I'm assuming, or some form of homage to baby Jesus, she'll leave baked treats and gifts. If not, I guess she just skips over your house. So that's nice. I guess she's not going to eat people. So that's nice, but it's almost like a bonus. It's like, oh, here's a bonus if you're Christian. Actually, religious persecution, like what happened in the creepy nursery rhymes episode, where there was a ton of like Bible interpretation and religious persecution going on, and like political movements going on hidden in those nursery rhymes. But this one's more like, oh, do you have a baby Jesus? Okay, well, here is a baked treat. So that's nice. And she's said to have a shawl covered in soot, maybe because she goes down chimneys. So that is all I'm covering for this episode. Happy winter solstice. Happy winter season. I typically have a tough time in the winter months and colder months. And so it was really nice to be able to talk with you about apparently my book. I went off on a little bit of a tangent about my book, but also about some fun things that I am like looking into in the different mythology during the season. It kind of perks me up a bit to be able to talk to you about it. Part 2 is coming your way on January 2nd. So merry, happy Hanukkah, and I hope you have a lovely winter to all the winter creatures who creep and lurk. Thanks to all you spooky souls out there for listening to Creepycore and Folklore. Follow on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok if you're looking for more uncanny content. If you have your own tales to tell, you can email creepycoreandfolklore@gmail.com. If you liked this, please leave a review wherever you get your podcasts, or tell a friend who might enjoy these stories to spread the word. If you're interested in dark fantasy, check out my Hollowverse series. Ashes is available now in paperback and ebook on Amazon and audiobook on Audible, and the sequel is underway. I'm Iona Wayland, and I'll see you next time.